Welcome back to part number 2 of my interview with Mr. Scott Stewart of the Madison Scouts. Can't believe I actually got to interview this amazing person, but you guys are going to see the second part of this video where we talk a little bit more about 1998 and some other great information about the Corps. So here we go. Enjoy. Yeah, if you want to talk about 98, let's talk about 98, because I'm all about, talking about great shows.
Well, the thing we did that year, first of all, the way we put a show together was it had to be based on great music, no matter what, even if the visual or the thematic area premise came off first, we had to find great music to fill it. And we wouldn't go in a different direction if we didn't have that great music. You'd have to keep looking back to the drawing board. One thing we did was, in order to make sure that we were good as we had to be, we started out and we made sure that program was solidified and picked, like I said before, in December. When the guys came to the January camp, they had all their music, and we were able to get ready for everything, because that first show there was going to be the most important. And we did a couple of concerts during the winter, which were goals for us to set things. But I digress. Let me get to the 98 show.
No worries.
Okay. Basically, what I wanted to make sure we did was a different show every year after the Spanish shows. Ones that we could have done Spanish shows forever, I would imagine. But I felt that if we moved to a different style and a different approach each year, it was not only more challenging to us and the membership, but the audience had a different treat every year. The 98 show, that came after the Pirate show and right before the Jesus Christ Superstar show. I think it sometimes gets ignored because it was almost more subtle what the theme was there. Basically, the theme was we did 3 kinds of jazz. We had a Japanese anime piece. That was the first piece in the show. And then the second piece in the show was Hall of the Mountain King. And the last part of the show was Remembrance. Now, those were all jazz pieces. First one, Japanese anime. Second one, classical jazz. And the third one, jazz rock. And the pieces, they were pulled off like that. But not only did we have a different title on each part of the show, but the first part we had different uniforms for each number as far as the color guard went. They're the same as the rest of the Corps in the first number. Second number, they had vests, and the last number, they had all silver. And then the drum line, each drum line in each number had a different makeup. One had all the people on snares and basses. Another one had many on tenor. They had different drums as well. And so that was different. The drill, we approached each piece of the drill in a different way as well. So what you had was 3 pieces that were all jazz, but different kinds of jazz. And again, the beauty of the thing was that because everything changed so much for each one, it was like a different corps doing each number. I don't know if a lot of people caught the fact that the drum line, again, was on different drums each number, that the color guard had a different uniform each number. Mm-hmm. And if they did, I don't know if they tied together that it was a very cohesive thing, even though it was very differing in the parts that went into it. But anyhow, that one was one of my favorites from a challenging standpoint. To make it come off like that, it was a lot of fun having to dig deep and make that work. But I think that piece was as great as any other, just done differently and maybe not quite as obvious.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't remember. I think I've seen 98 before. I just haven't really watched it recently. Since I started my YouTube channel, I've been trying not to watch things so that when I do watch them, they're fresh. So I get an honest reaction from what I'm seeing. Because I was there in 98, actually, at finals. The 2 years I went after I aged out in 93, I went 96 and 98. So 2 fantastic years. And of course, I missed 97, that's honestly, Pirates of Lake Mendota is one of my favorite shows.
Oh, it's a great show.
It's because it's just so different, but it's so Madison again, because it's just that. We're going to scream and we're going to play. The low brass was amazing that year. They were amazing every year, but and I'm a baritone player. So
great.
That was just the low brass. You could just hear them. And honestly, it was very clean.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the visual was clean. The guard was clean. The drum line was clean. Everything was clean. And that whole period, though, I mean, you guys were always clean, don't get me wrong, but I think that year just kind of had a little bit more to me, that was a Madison. We're pirates or whatever, we're here and we're gonna,
It's interesting the way that started. That was 1997. My color guard teacher at the time was Chad Dugan, and he came to me at the end of the season and said, I think we should do a pirate show next year. I said, okay, let me think about it. And the thing is, I went looking for music then. I was afraid at first. I felt, man, I don't know if we can find enough different kinds of music to make this the way we generally are happy putting a show together. But I lucked into a couple of things. First of all, two of my staff members wanted to write an original piece. So I told one, go ahead and start writing it, and we'll work through that and see how that goes. And then one day while he had sent me the first part of it, and it was going to be great. But then one of my other staff members brought in somebody, said, "Take it, I come over and play this for you." And he had written a piece that he said he thought was used for the closer. And it was the one we did use, fantastic. And so there we had that. And I took the one that I had my original staff member, Scott Horma, write for an opener. So it was the opener and a closer were originals. In the middle of the show, the pieces were both British brass band pieces that I had just lucked upon because a guy that was interested in the chorus said, "Hey, have you ever heard this British brass band stuff?" I said, "I'd like to hear a lot of it." So he gave me a bunch. And one of the pieces in there was the second number that we did. And that was the one with the drunken sailor. The guy that staggered all around the field, and they did the between the legs thing and passed the rifle off.
Yeah. That was just, I mean, there's just so much. I think the coolest part is when you have the drum rack.
Oh, yeah.
And it swivels around. You have the two guys on top sword fighting, and then they just jump off. They just go, and we're jumping. And I was like, oh, man. That was, and you saw my reaction and everything to it. But it, to me, and what was funny is I had only listened to the show. I'd never seen the video of the show up until I watched it right then. Because I had, we didn't have YouTube 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Right.
So I just had my tape and then my CD, and I'd burn it. And I had 97, and I just loved the heck out of that show. So it was kind of like, I guess I was like a kid again, because I got to see such an amazing thing happen. That's just what I love so much about drum corps. That's what a lot of people love about drum corps, is that you could just create this thing that you put out to the world, and just everybody loves it, or they don't love it, or they, it's controversial or whatever it is, but it's still drum corps. It's the essence of drum corps, good or bad or indifferent, whether it's controversial, not controversial, fun. And I think that's one thing that Madison's always been able to kind of handle really well, is just, we're here to perform. We're here to please the crowd. That's our job. That's what we're here to do. Whether or not we score well, oh well.
Pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead. There's a couple of things that were from the 97 show that are really humorous. One of them is the rack that you were talking about, the rotating rack. When we went and did that, in first place, me and my percussion guy, Jeff Moore, he was talking about it. It was his idea to do that. And I said, fine. And we went out and we bought a shitload of material for it to put it together. Anyhow, he had made a mistake when he put down the dimensions of it. And so what happened was, we got to Memorial Day camp and the truck pulled in, and truck driver comes up and he goes, "Man, do you know how much metal we've got in the back of this thing?" And we went back into the semi and started unloading it. And it was like, oh my God, we could never have carried this stuff around. And I said, "Jeff, what is this?" And he got so sheepish right away, and he went in and worked on it all night. He had ordered twice as much as we needed. So you saw how big that thing was to begin with. Imagine having raw materials for something twice that big. It was like, well, we'd have to get another truck to pull it. So that was kind of funny. The other one was, we had a tradition of the day of the final show. The Corps would kind of prank the staff, and that note at the end of the 97 show that they hold out for 25 seconds while the drum major's taking the picture and holding the flag up, that they did that afternoon. We weren't ready for it. I mean, we were doing our final runs for the year, All of a sudden we get to that note, and instead of cutting off after 8 counts or 12 counts, it just kept going and going. And we were cracking up. We finished it up, and I looked at the rest of the staff. I said, "That's going in tonight." And they're like, "No, we can't do this." And, yes, we can. And we pulled it off, and it was great. I mean, really funny.
That to me is very epic, because and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. It's just kind of like they just kept holding it forever, and the tone quality never dipped.
Right. You're right.
They just played right through, no problem. Nothing, no drop. You couldn't hear any drop. It's just, that was so awesome.
Well, another one they did pulled on us was 95, the Spanish show, second Spanish show. 95, the Cavaliers won that year, I think, and they played Mars for an opener. Well, we're getting ready to do the final run through again, and it starts out da 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 da. And then instead of going in da da da, instead of going into that, all of a sudden it was da 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 dun 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 dun. And the color guard had footballs and basketballs, because the Cavs use those red balls during that year. These guys had found them in the gym we were staying in. And so while the horn line is playing this, the guard is tossing these footballs and basketballs and volleyball balls. It was funny as hell. But what a shock when they first did it, because here's your final run through, and what are they doing? It's pretty funny. Oops, you're frozen. There you
are. Yeah, you kind of froze up too. That's okay. I heard you the whole time, so we're good. But that's just, but I think you just have to do that. It's serious, but it's not that serious.
You got to have the maturity of the guys to handle it. We certainly had that. I mean, you don't see people in most of the corps anymore having guys that are there, like you said, 6-7 years. That's almost non-existent. And with us, like with the scouts, the lowest age we took was 18, unless there was some real spectacular person that was 17. But we had virtually no one under 18 ever. Average age of the corps was about 20 years old, because with that 22nd birthday being the if you were 22 after the start of the season, you could march that season. And so that shoved our average age up to 20.3. I mean, so these guys were men, they weren't kids. And for them, and that's why they had the maturity to be able to pull these kind of things. And yet, it didn't affect the final performance at all.
So I'm going to ask this question. What do you think about the kind of the transition in the 90s? Because to me, it seemed like as soon as we hit, because I marched 89, and 89 was kind of the end of, the 80s. And it was kind of the end of like a traditional drum corps, because we went from 2 valves to 3 valves in 1990. And then shows really kind of got more like thematic, like full on, we're going to do a Broadway show. We're going to do, they had done some of the Broadway shows in the 80s, but it wasn't like to this level. It wasn't, the level. And then nowadays they just have full blown electronics and looping and this and that. And
I go off on that. Okay. I think that the 90s were the start of a shift toward that, the elimination of melodics in the music, in the brass section, being picked up by the pit, which is so enormous that it's ridiculous. Yeah. And then you've got the electronics, which, that's such a financial thing. And really, in my opinion, it took away from one of the most important things of the activity, was that all this excitement and this wonderful sound was produced by the people, not by a machine. And a machine sounds different than people. When you start blending them, I think it takes away something that was there before. That was just that incredible. How can these people, without any amplification, put out a sound like that? And that was part of the thrill of drum corps, was making sure that you were able to do that. So in the 90s, as I watched it shift, that was depressing to me. And I tried to make sure that we were able to be as good as anybody in any area. yet we did things that still appealed to the crowd and gave the guys a chance to do something where they had a crowd react like that. Now, of course, that isn't everybody, but I think it was well on its way toward what it is now, which in my opinion is, I don't know if I should say this, but I think it's winter guard on a summer field. We already have winter guard, so it was a sad thing that we traded drum corps for winter guard in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would kind of agree to that. I think especially in the mid 2000s to late 2000, like 2010-ish. I think after that, I mean, I think it kind of started shifting a little bit back in the early 2010s, 12s, 13s, because you had like Carolina Crown and those corps starting to come up. So I do agree with you. I just think drum corps is an ever shifting thing, and I get why they did what they did. They were trying to attract more people. They were trying to get more skill level things. But to me, drum corps is a bugle. It's not a B flat horn. That's banned. But I get it. I understand the financial thing too with the B flat horns versus the G horns. But because 99 was kind of like the hybrid year that you could have G or B flat. And then 2000, it's like you could still do whatever you wanted technically, but everybody shifted to B flat. And and you can tell the difference in the sound. You can tell the difference. There's a huge difference. And to me, it's like, and people will argue with me, oh, a B flat's more in tune. I go, no. G is more in tune. It's easier to play because I played it for 5 years. It's way easier to play than a B flat horn. You can play louder. And as a corps, you can actually be more in tune with the G bugle because it's lower. So
I agree. And besides the fact that we were able to be in tune with the G, and that was another part of the beauty. You didn't have to have it easier, it didn't have to be easier to play on a G horn. I mean, a G horn was what it took. You put your physical effort into a G horn to make it sound like it did. And there's no way to match that with a B flat horn. I agree with you. Again, it's kind of funny. I sound like a dinosaur when I do this, but my email address is dinostew2002. And that was the year Stewart became the dinosaur. But
yeah, I understand because I'm from the old school.
Well, the old school was attractive. I mean, the new one is no more attractive. I mean, I would argue with anybody that what we have now is not better than what we had then, simply different in a way that I think they took away some of the essence of what we had for drum corps. And on top of that, just throwing the financial thing in, it's incredibly expensive. And the things that cost so much money, it was better off without them. I mean, that's my opinion.
No, and I think a lot of people would agree to your opinion too. I mean, because now it costs, for a member, $4,000 to $7,000 to march.
It's ridiculous.
It costs me $450 to march.
When I left, we were still paying. Our guys were paying $500.
Yeah, I mean, it should. I get nowadays, gas is more expensive, vehicles are more expensive. I kind of can see a little bit, but that's like astronomically more expensive.
Oh, right.
To do it. I mean, I couldn't do it if I was a member now. I mean, you'd literally just have to work 3 jobs and not do anything else just to march. And then you'd come back poor and then you have to start over again.
That's why I think you have a number of people that do the first and second year and they're not back for a year beyond that because they can't afford to do it.
Yeah. I got very lucky. Our corps, the freelancers, they had a really good financial base when I was there.
California corps had an advantage of that.
Yeah, because of the bingo. The bingo was, exactly. And Blue Devils of Santa Clara still do that, which, great for them because my gosh. And then the Mandarins, actually, their corps hall's right up the street from my work. So I see them all the time. I see the building all the time, but, I'm glad the Mandarins are keeping the Sacramento thing going. The
one thing I'll bring up on that, Blue Coats, for example, I haven't watched a lot of drum corps since I left because I was pretty well disillusioned in a lot of ways. But as far as the Blue Coat show, that one they did where they had the bend at the end with the electronics.
Oh yeah, tilt.
Right. Now, that would have been possible to do on horns, but you would have had to work your ass off to make it happen. And that's the way it should be, in my opinion, is you have to work hard at some of these things rather than just find an easier way to do them. And when people were talking about electronics, making so they don't have to pound on the keys so hard, well, unless you're teaching your guys wrong and unless you're playing like that the whole show, other people, the professionals, they don't always just touch on their instrument. There's a certain point where you're going to distort, but overall, if you teach you guys how to do it, they're going to be able to pull it off. But it takes time. It takes more than just turning it over to the electronic part of it. And I hate that when I watch those and it zeroes in on the guy pushing down a key.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what is that? I mean, that used to be something that you had to build up physical endurance to do. And now the guy is able to blow away the whole chord with just a push of his finger on the keyboard. So anyhow, I sound terribly old-fashioned here, but
no, I wouldn't say you're old-fashioned. I just say you're kind of like me, where it's
I'm
like
purist.
I love pure drum corps. I mean,
Yep.
and that's the beauty. I mean, if I look back to probably one of the 91 Santa Clara Vanguard when they did Miss Saigon, they had to create all these different sounds and they had to figure it out. And they did, and they figured it out really well. I mean, they were amazing. You know, the helicopter thing and all the different sound effects and stuff like that. I mean, to me, that was the whole difference about drum corps versus band versus anything else, is like the ingenuity to figure it out. We want this. How can we make that happen? How can we create that, you know, naturally? And I get the whole thing, you know, but now they're amplifying people and, you know, and for band, I'm all for amplification in band because they don't have the stronger players. And, you know, half your band's woodwind or 3/4 is woodwind. So you have to amplify but a little bit, but I don't understand why you need to amplify in drum corps, but.
Oh, well, again, and the thing I feel is that what happened is the things that are costing a lot of money now are things that don't help it at all. In fact, it took it the opposite direction. But enough about that.
Yeah.
I only allow myself about 5 minutes of negativism each day, and I used it up.
All right, we won't talk anymore about that kind of stuff. But so what? So you left in 2002
after the season. Yeah.
After the season, and then you went to the Kilties. Is that correct?
Well, I ran the Kilties for 7 years.
Oh wow!
It was a different situation. One that some things were really good about it and some things weren't, but they were in a situation where overall there wasn't enough people. When we started having people that were just too old to do it, there wasn't enough people interested in coming in and filling it. So we had about 4 or 5 decent shows. Working with them was different. Again, you know, there was great people there and there was people that had some problems, and it was something I'm not unhappy that I did. One of the great things about it was my wife got to march because she was obviously too old to march in a junior corps, but she had come to the United States because of the Madison Scouts, and that's how I met her. She had come over to just see what this is all about because in Japan, she was in an all-girl college, and what they did was they saw videos of the corps, so she came over, and that was how that happened. But with the Kilties, she got to march, and she's a baritone player, real good, fine musician. She can play anything, but she played baritone, and it was a joy for her. I enjoyed it too until the end, and when it got to the very end, it was just best that we stopped doing it.
Yeah, I mean that's still kind of cool though, because I mean, you know, that's back to traditional drum corps.
Yeah,
you know, G bugles, stuff like that. And I think I really wish we had that out here. We only really had one senior corps, and that was the Renegades.
Oh, I like the Renegades.
Yeah, they're pretty badass. I know a lot of people that have marched with the Renegades. And that was like kind of the last bastion of old drum corps here. And then there's a freelancer alumni corps. And they won. They beat Starve Indiana a couple years ago at the mini corps competition. Oh. So if you guys are watching, kudos to you because they're amazing. They're all a bunch of great guys. But So that they actually been having rehearsals like that, and they all are on G bugle. There's no, I think that some people do have some B flat horns, but it's because you can't really find G bugles that much anymore.
Right.
Unfortunately, they're kind of just disappearing or getting ruined or something. But anyway, where was I trying to go? I'm sorry, lose my train of thought. So it happens when you get older. You lose your train of thought. So we were talking. Yeah, so we were talking about the Kilty. So what have you been doing lately? Just in retirement and
let's see. I guess I can go back a little bit. We've done some things with our alumni corps. Like
that's right. Yeah.
2006, that was before I did the Kilties, actually. Myself and two other people put that together. And that was pretty much a miracle. I mean, that was all, we had 230 some people. Most of them were guys that had marched under me. In fact, almost all of them were. And they hadn't forgotten the things that they learned. And man, I don't know if you had a chance to see us that year at DCI, but it was phenomenal. I mean, truly phenomenal. In 5 weekends, we put it together, and they were.
Wow.
Have you seen any clips of it?
I have. I've seen some clips, and I'll probably will now have to watch it put it on my channel so we can watch it. But I haven't seen it. I think I saw it live in 2006, and I think that was the last time I've seen it, to be honest. I do remember it.
Okay. Well, with that group of people, we had a couple of banquets in between, and then we went out and did the Macy's parade. We did that with alumni plus the current corps. We put like 400 people out in Macy's in 2014. That was a blast. 2016, I took them to Mardi Gras, and then 2 years later to Mardi Gras again. And so we've done things like that, and those have been projects that, because very few of us did the running of it, that took a bit of time. But beyond that, much of my whole life was pretty much poured into the Corps. And so I spent some time getting out of there. After I left the Corps, I would go things like, I'd go to Menards. I hadn't been in a place like that forever because I did drum corps 24 hours a day for most of my life. And I'd go, wow, look at all this stuff. Pretty funny. But beyond that, a lot of my time goes just to help me out. My wife, who was involved with everything. She's just a tremendous person, and I'm blessed to have her. But that takes some of the time. Working on the finances, taking care of the house. I'm pretty much the house mother. And so I try to keep things clean and take care of things like that. I work out every day. And so, it's a lot of stuff like that. I get a chance to see my family more than I ever did before. And I guess I almost feel guilty sometimes because for so much of my life, I poured everything into the Corps. And now that I don't have that, sometimes I feel guilty, like, man, I can't be relaxing. I never was able to do that when I do that. It made it easier for me when the shift started happening. Again, I was fighting people at DCI all the time, trying to be the one that would keep it from happening, what I saw as being negative. And that just took out too much time. I mean, I can remember sitting there thinking, if you're getting pissed off at people and doing things like that, something's wrong in an activity like this. There shouldn't have to be this tension in this. And so it was good to get out from under that as well. The saddest thing I have is with Madison, we had 3 groups. I think you're probably aware of it. We had Capital Sound, which was formed as a corps for people who didn't want to tour or couldn't tour or didn't have the talent level quite to make it into Scouts. It was a co-ed group that we started in the mid-90s, and they were great. I mean, they in fact used freelancer uniforms for a couple of years when theirs burned up before this season. But we had that, and then we had Southwind, and I don't know if you know about it. Okay.
I remember Southwind.
All right. In the recent years when we took them over, did you even know we did that?
Yeah, I did. I read that actually. Yeah.
Okay.
They were a good group. I mean, yeah. I remember in the 90s, Southwind was actually pretty formidable. They were doing really well. They were
Class A in the first part of the 90s. I went and helped them with their program in 97. And at the end of the season, their director asked me to take the Corps over and make it part of our association. And so we did that. And the next year, we spent a whole year putting it together. And the first year out on the field, 99, they only missed finals by 4 or 5 places. And the next year, they were just a couple points behind, or about 1.5 points out of finals. And that was in just 2 years. After I left Madison, unfortunately, those two got left by the wayside, and that was sad. That made it easy to stay away.
Yeah. Yeah, I did read that as well. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate because I mean, I remember Southwind and I was like impressed. I was like,
oh yeah,
wow, they're really good. And you could see that they were really trying to build and really trying to progress. You know, again, you could see it.
It was almost all my Madison Scout alumni that were staff, and I put their shows together for them. I did the program coordination there too. Gave me a chance to do something like that for a different kind of group. And I used music that I probably wouldn't have used with the Scouts because it sounded like Southwind. Just great stuff.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, times change, and change in time is what happens. You know, you can't.
No.
And once you're gone, you're gone. I mean, you're
right.
It's kind of out of your hands. So,
yep.
And I was kind of, I mean, no disrespect to the Madison Scouts. I was just kind of, when they decided to go co-ed, I mean, kind of some people were kind of like, oh, you know, they're making, I mean, but there comes a point where you just have to make a decision. I guess they made a decision, and I hope it's going to be for the best. I really do. Because I love this Madison Scouts, like a lot of people do. So I hope it's the right thing for the group. And I hope they grow, and I hope they progress, and I hope they become what they're trying to become. And
well, the whole activity, it's going to be interesting to see how and if it comes back after this pandemic. I mean, I think it's going to be affected greatly.
Yeah, I mean, especially it really hit. It hit everybody hard. Because I know Santa Clara and Blue Devils are both not fielding this year because they need a whole year to kind of get their finances and everything back up. Mandarins, I was really shocked that they're actually going to go and on smaller tour, but they're going to go tour and go to DCI and all that stuff. So, and then I'm sure a lot of cores back east, not everybody's participating this year.
Right.
So,
Carolina Crown, I don't think is.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to come back. I think it's going to bounce back, but it's going to take time. I think it's going to take like 3 or 4 years to really kind of fully get back to where it was, but you never know.
No. Well, like I said, though, I haven't really seen many DCI shows since I left in 2002. I did continue to go to a DCA every year. Mm-hmm. And DCA, I really enjoyed that. I went to it for many years in a row. And I stopped going basically when they brought in the electronics and the B flat. They lasted a few more years before they brought them in. But I remember just sitting up there watching and going, man, this core used to blow me away. And now they've got electronics. And it's not the same. Oh shit, I went over my limit now as far as so I got to stop talking negative. Let's talk about something positive.
That's okay. You know, I totally get it. I mean, I think we're similar in the fact that we like pure drum corps, and that's what we hope we find somewhere. Some pure drum corps.
Sure.
But it's just unfortunate byproduct of time. You know, things change. People, they evolve. They want to attract different types of people. They want whatever. But all right. Well, I really appreciate the time you've taken with me. I mean, I'm honored. I almost couldn't sleep last night because I was so excited. Because
I hope I didn't disappoint.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I'm being truthful, honest. It's like if it wasn't for the Madison Scouts, I probably would not have stayed in drum corps, because that show, the '88 show, is the first show I ever saw on a video, and that's what really kind of like sparked me, like, oh my God, I could do that, and like really propelled me and pushed me. So seriously, thank you. Because that show was, Malaguena was just, to me, is the epic epitome of drum corps. And I think a lot of people feel that same way today. It's just an outstanding show.
Well, the thing I look at, though, the show was a great show, but it wasn't any greater than the ones that came before it or came after it. The fact I found over the years that when you place really well, all of a sudden everything was great about it. And if you don't place as well, then there's problems with it. Not that those problems existed before the judges said there was problems with it, but at the end of the season. And that used to always get me because we do our spring concert and people would come up and go, wow, you guys have really got it this year. And I say, well, we're going to be really good this year, but you don't have to count on much from a placing change. Again, there seems to be this magical thing that happens when the Corps won in '88, that all of a sudden it was better than anything we had ever done before or after. And it wasn't. I mean, there was very little difference in quality from the top show to the bottom show that we did in all those years we worked together on it. So again, '88 was a great year, but that doesn't exclude these other years that were.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time. I don't want to keep you any longer. I know it's later there than it is here. So, but well,
it's good talking to you. And I feel like we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, same here. And you know, if you ever want to talk again in the future, by all means, just let me know. I mean, I'd love to have you on. And just so you know, this is going to end up. It's going to be on my channel. Okay. I'm probably going to be 2 parts because I only do 30 minutes maximum because it's just too much to watch in one sitting. But I do really appreciate it, and I will send you. Make sure I send you a link if you're not already subscribed, and then that way you can see the video when we're all done.
Okay, great.
Well, that concludes my interview with this amazing legend of the drum corps community, Mr. Scott Stewart. Thank you guys so very much for joining me. Thank you for all the support on the first video. Greatly appreciate it. Please subscribe if you like cool videos like this, because we are going to be doing lots of cool stuff, especially once we go full bore with the season. I'm going to try to get out to some live shows, hopefully, and see some very good drum corps. So please make sure you guys stay tuned for that. All right, well, thank you guys so much once again. If you have any comments you'd like to leave, go ahead and put them down in the comments below. Be glad to take a look at those. All right, till the next video, you guys stay safe, and I'll see you guys then. March on.